All right, should be live here. So on the bench this evening, we're going to talk about a couple of things that have happened here in recent days. KJ Bolden's commitment, obviously Saturday evening happened, pretty seismic moment. We're going to get a little bit behind the scenes with that with Brendan Sinone as well as Zach, both of them joining me here tonight. We're going to give it probably about 2 minutes for people to start kind of rolling in here, getting a feel for it this evening, and then we're gonna get after this and we're gonna enjoy ourselves. And I'm hosting, so it's gonna be a very serious episode, unlike when Brendan hosts.
Streamlined. It's gonna be efficient.
Yeah. The other thing we're gonna talk about is the first three days of preseason camp. That was Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. They had today, Sunday, off from preseason camp. They get back at it starting on Monday to kind of preview this coming week. Switches to morning from the afternoon like it was last week. It's Monday to Friday. Thursday and Friday will be in Jacksonville at UNF. A little bit of a road trip for the team. They like to do that to just kind of get them the feel of going on the road and just being together. There's reasons for it. I think, Mike Norvell has talked about it every year that they've done it, and there's value to it. We don't exactly love it because, well, we have to leave town, and my wife doesn't exactly love it because it's the first day of school for our kids.
Oh, that's nice for you to get away from that hecticness.
Yeah.
I totally forgot all about that, dude. I forgot we had to go out of town.
Well, remember, days are weeks right now, so just remember that.
Days are weeks.
And then they'll come back, have Saturday off, and they'll have a scrimmage on Sunday. That will be their first scrimmage of the spring. Or I'm sorry, preseason. God, it's not spring. We're way ahead of that.
I keep wanting to write spring camp too.
Yeah, I think once we're about 4 or 5 days into it, I think you work it out of there. But yeah, I definitely have had some moments with that.
Chris, who are our sponsors?
Our sponsors are the Turner Group, lovely folks that can help you with any home buying needs, whether you're in the Central Florida area or trying to do something up here in Tallahassee. Feel free to reach out. If you need more details, you can reach out to Brendan. He has it all on lock there. He even knows the actual name of the people that work there, unlike me, who screwed it up in the past. But she does work there for the record. And then our other sponsor, as Brendan mentions, he's fueled by him, Chattanooga Whiskey. Outstanding whiskey, multiple options for you to enjoy. Able to find in about 15 states now, Brendan? Is that correct?
Yeah, and all throughout the state of Florida. They're all over the place, man.
Yeah, I'm going dry right now because I'm trying to, stay in preseason camp shape, not sweat it out there. But we'll get back to it when the season rolls around. Hopefully in joyous occasions, not to drown our sorrows.
Dude, my mom got my dad a birthday gift, or no, Father's Day gift of Chattanooga whiskey. They had it at a party that they had over the summer. Gone in one night. It was a huge hit.
It's good stuff. I mean, when we took it to that golf tournament, it amazed me how many of those folks had never had it before, and how many of them walked away saying they enjoyed it.
Yeah,
so.
And asking for more info on it, which is
and they strike me as the type that enjoy such things. So All right, so we're 3 minutes in here. We're gonna get rolling. All right, so let's fire this thing off. FSU lands KJ Bolden. That recruitment started back in 2020. FSU was his first offer. Tons of investment, ton of time, ton of work. Brendan Sinone, he sweated it out down the stretch, but my man probably had a great deal of anxiety going on, but he stayed consistent. It was always Florida State. Brendan, explain yourself. Explain what the last week of that was like. Explain what the last 6 weeks of that was like, because the turning point for that was mid-June when he visited FSU for a multi-day unofficial. Yeah. And that's where we started voicing, specifically Brendan and Zach started voicing a belief that this could be done, could be pulled off. And there wasn't a whole lot of national folks on that until here very recently. But Brendan, explain yourself.
Yeah, and even then, like the amount of drama going into this recruitment I've never been a part of it, like the legitimate unknowns. Like I talked to Berg on the way up because I knew that On3 was going to be hosting it, and he didn't know, and he was like the master of ceremonies. Like no one knew. When I got there to the it was in Flowery Branch. I know he's at Buford High School. Flowery Branch is the city just north of Buford in northern kind of like metro, or just outside of metro, I guess, suburbs of Atlanta. But got there, and Michael Langston from War Chant was there, and that was all that was there for FSU coverage. Now, obviously, it's a hike for us to get up there, but one UGA-based reporter after another kept showing up. We had an Auburn reporter show up. We had 3 different people from 24/7 Sports there, all representing different universities in coverage. So, like, even seeing that, like, once I saw the 5th UGA person show up, like, as good as I felt going into it, and I felt as good that last hour going into the commitment as I ever had. I wasn't nervous.
Why?
More excited. Why? I was told that Florida State was going to get KJ Bolden at that point. And I had never been told, and to be fair, I had never been told with 100% like definitiveness, like that Florida State was going to get KJ Bolden. It was always extreme confidence. It was always, and we're going to talk about this, some of the backstory of like where confidence on our reporting, my reporting, and all you guys helping out as well, like where our reporting as a site like was coming from. It was a very like eclectic blend of like information we were piecing together. But like I never felt like it was 100%. I think I was like back in early July, like at like 50 something percent, and that got people's attention because at that point Florida State was not considered a leader, and got up into the 60s. And I would say I went up there on Saturday morning. We made the decision on Friday, Chris. Remember what I said Friday before we left practice that I'm not going to go?
You were hem-hawing at practice. You're like, I don't know if I'm going to go. We don't know for sure. But should I go? It's pretty important. KJ Bolden's pretty good. A little hem-hawing. And then, like, you know, a little bit of words will down in our direction. You're like, I got to go. Like,
yeah,
this is one I got to be
that Friday night was, and we reported like that this was going to be the last thing I was going to report on it. Was the most confident I had been. So, and I told you, Chris, like I had to be 90 to 95% sure it would be FSU to invest the time during camp season to go and drive up. So, plus not feeling 100% still, like, yeah, it was a thing. I was like, okay, I have to wait. This is going to be worth our time. We're not going to go at a coin flip. Right. So was confident going up there, more confident as I got further north, I got more and more confident. And then about an hour before the commitment ceremony, I was 100% sure it would be Florida State at that point.
So part of your confidence was Zach's reporting that Cam Davis was on his way up.
Oh my God.
That definitely was a relief moment.
That happened in the afternoon while driving up, maybe late morning, Zach.
Yeah, I think it was like 11 a.m.
It gave me a shot of energy because I'm like, oh, if Cam Davis is coming, we're good. Like he would. It was kind of the same thing with Luke Kromenhoek and Charles Lester, and we had that for a few days. We didn't have the Cam Davis thing; we weren't sitting on that. And Zach made my day. He made my trip. Doing my trip much more at ease. In addition to some of the stuff I was hearing from FSU's. And did you have a similar reaction, Zach, when you found out Cam was coming?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was like I'm in the middle of like moving, so. I had texted Cam that morning and he had gotten back to me. I'm like, oh shoot, like this is really happening. So I put that up and obviously, you know, the Noles 24/7 subscribers went crazy. And, you know, made sure to tell the guys in the chat. And I don't even think you reacted right away. You maybe reacted like 30 minutes after I sent the text in our chat.
Yeah, I didn't see it. I didn't know that was a thing.
He was focused on the road, two eyes,
good,
straight ahead.
Good.
Yeah, I stopped Cordell, that you know the gateway to South Georgia is when I stopped and did a little pit stop and checked my phone, and yeah, that was good news. So
you stopped, picked up Cam Davis, and then brought him.
Yeah, because I was pretty close to Albany. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, so the commitment ceremony. At one point, I looked at Langston like about 10 minutes before, and I just gave him a little, like we're good here. Like I felt like we were in as good a shape as we had been in terms of like investing time and resources into covering this. So he picks FSU, went into a variety of reasons why. You can check out Noles 24/7. KJ spoke to the media after, but I mean, a lot of the things that we'd heard and reported, like he articulated, right? That FSU had a good plan for him with versatility, that it was his dream school. That was a huge factor. Relationship with Mike Norvell, big factor. And FSU had been recruiting him and been his day one offer. They were the first one. Pat Surtain and that relationship. Like those are all things that, and he even said that June unofficial visit is when it started to change, right, Chris? That was
it was a pivot. It was a change. It was pivotal. It was where the momentum. Yeah, it was where the momentum kind of changed. And this recruitment speaks to playing a long game. I mean, we mentioned offered in 2020. I believe he came to the spring game in 21, and that's the spring game where they couldn't host him. Correct? That was just the come on your own if you're coming kind of deal.
That was the day with like Travis Hunter, like that DB crew was insane that day. And Bolden was like an afterthought because he was a guy that was like insanely young compared to a lot of the guys that were there.
Came here in June of 21 for an unofficial during camp season. I don't think he camped, if I recall correctly, but he did come during that. You know, he got back here quite a bit here in recent months. Obviously, we mentioned the June visit that just happened. Trying to think, did he make a game last year?
No,
you recall?
He did not.
He did not. So it really picked back up in April of 23 and then continued because he visited on April 3rd of 23.
And he was
and
supposed
then he
to
came
visit
back in June.
Yeah, he was supposed to visit at the end of March. That visit got canned because it was going to be a one-day visit, and they wanted to get him on campus for multiple days. So they rescheduled for that next week in April. And Brendan will get into the full timeline, but that's kind of, that's the first visit under, Norvell and then Surtain, especially of this year. And that's kind of how FSU really, cemented itself back into this one.
All right, Brendan, back to you, buddy.
Yeah, so we documented like the week going in and like the 24 hours going into it. It was a level of confidence that was as high as it had been, right? But like we'll Tarantino it. We started at the end and we'll go to the beginning of it, like where it wasn't always that level of confidence. This to me started to become on our radar, like, hey, this is a real thing during that June unofficial visit and the subsequent days after. Zach had a report on the Jeremiah Smith and the KJ Bolden unofficial visits, which happened in that same time frame, and basically was expressing like the FSU has some like legitimate staying power here. And what I think was so big was that it was multiple days, and the entire intent or the main objective of that trip was for KJ to spend time with Pat Surtain. Like that was the objective because Pat got here in December, I think. And so while Mike Norvell and other coaches on the staff, and this was collective, this was team effort for the entire coaching staff, defensive coaching staff. Derek Ray like has a good relationship with KJ Bolden. I got to like even that was like a tell to me, like at the end of the unofficial visit when KJ was about to do an interview with us, like he went out of his way to go give D-Ray like a hug at the end of it. And I was like, this guy's giving like the general manager, this isn't the position coach or the head coach that he's going out of his way to like give legitimate like love to. Like, no, it was like that with the entire coaching staff. Like this was a super hands-on, well-structured recruitment. And what FSU had to do was make up for lost time with Pat Surtain only being in KJ Bolden's life for a few months. That's what that unofficial visit was. That was huge. That was a huge turning point in all this. And I would say in the subsequent days after that, in addition to Zach's reporting, we had a few like little like breadcrumbs that were placed of like, we feel really good about what we did, Florida State, in that span, to the point where I was told like, don't dismiss us. Like, do not dismiss us. And that's okay. He's on the radar at this point.
To help with Brendan here real quick, you got to remember at this point, most people think he's probably a Georgia lock.
Or
Ohio it's not
State,
Georgia,
right?
it's Ohio State. Right.
Yeah. And then 3 and 4 are probably Clemson and Alabama.
Yeah, and Auburn got into the picture later, and FSU was always in the picture, but always kind of dismissed in the picture from a national perspective.
Chris, while you have KJ's profile pulled up, when did he either unofficially or officially visit Alabama?
The last official to Bama was June 23rd. It was the last official of the June window.
So it was the day. It was the day after FSU.
Yes, because he left. He was at FSU from June 20th to the 22nd.
Here's one thing that I did not report and couldn't report at the time, but one thing that gave me confidence later on in this process. I didn't know this at the time. I don't know if I would have been able to report at the time, but after KJ spent the entire or unofficial visit, I was going to say weekend, I don't think it was the weekend, with Pat Surtain, he goes to Alabama. My understanding is that Pat Surtain, is it the second or junior?
Yes, second.
Was at Alabama that weekend.
No, senior. Oh, I'm sorry.
So
the
the
son. I'm sorry. Yes,
the player in the
second.
All-Pro or the Pro Bowl cornerback in the NFL was there, and that would be a strength, you think, for Alabama, right? In that, but he ended up getting to shoot the shit with the coach's son, who obviously speaks really highly of his dad. So you had this great visit where FSU feels like home. It's his dream school. Like you just got to give him a reason, right? And that little seed is planted in addition to like the day after, like it was not planned. It was one of those things that like that helped propel FSU in this recruitment that was just out of FSU's control. It was just a matter of like, you did the right things during the unofficial visit and like it unfolded in a way that helped you ascend. So
right under Nick Saban's nose
Take that, Nick. So we go to early July, and I still think after that unofficial visit, I'm thinking long game. And I think that's where FSU is thinking at that time. I don't have the details of what exactly shifted other than we knew that KJ Bolden had a commitment date set August 5th. And in that window between the late June visit and early July, get indication that like FSU might still be in position for this late in the year with that. And that was the other thing that came with that unofficial visit, right? Was that he was talking about setting up the OV in early November to Miami. So like that was like part of this, like, okay, it's going to be a long game. I think that's going to be FSU's strategy. But we end up getting wind that like FSU might be kicking. And they thought if they had to kick at any point, they could, to really like be like engaged in having the legitimate chance to beat out Georgia for Bolden. And Chris had reported on this. Like this was like UGA really, really wanted Bolden.
So I'd shared this with the guys very early. I had always been told that this was a guy that was basically earmarked by Georgia as someone they were going to get. Like in Kirby Smart's time there, they don't miss on many of those. Caleb Downs last year maybe might be one. There's not many. It's a very, very short list. And this is a kid in their backyard, down the road. He'd been to Georgia countless times, had a great relationship with Kirby Smart. We all know how Kirby Smart is with defense, and especially with defensive backs. Like, there's a ton of reasons to understand why Georgia, throughout this entire recruitment, felt really, really good about it. And heck, I think Georgia had maybe not overwhelming confidence, but I think they had confidence up to the moment he actually said the words Florida State on Saturday evening.
I mean, our director of recruiting at 24/7 Sports, Steve Wilfong, dropped an update on the Georgia board moments before Bolden's announcement started, claiming that there was, from his UGA sources, there was some confidence on their side. So, like, we're talking about minutes. We're talking about minutes before the kid announced. A guy that's probably the most well-sourced individual in this entire space in our industry is reporting that there's confidence in Athens.
Here's a crazy thing. We're going to fast forward. We are Tarantino. This is going all over the place. I had heard the weekend. I couldn't like come out and report. This is another backstory thing. I was told that Georgia basically got eliminated in the final week of the recruitment.
I mean, there had to be a reason why the coaches there were giving confidence. So I don't know.
I mean, me and Brendan talked on the last pod when we previewed the commitment that the kid played a phenomenal game. Like, in the sense of recruiting, like he kept people guessing and on the edge of the seat. Yeah. I mean, Auburn visit comes late. They feel like they're surging, and they legitimately felt like they were surging. He makes the comments he made publicly about that visit. He never really publicly, pushed anybody out the window as far as schools that were still in contention, never narrowed it down, kept people guessing. As you mentioned, there were reporters from multiple schools there. You don't show up to an announcement like that more often than not, unless you believe like there's a reason for me to be here.
So going back to now early to mid-July, we had again, building confidence that Florida State was in play. And I would say even like we didn't run with some of this, right? Like we had hinted. Go ahead, Chris.
But you guys brought it up. I mean, there were podcasts. Yeah. I think there's one prior to the 4th of July where we're talking about fireworks. And I think maybe it was asked, like, essentially who does FSU have a better shot with that isn't being talked about? And Bolden's name came up.
We strategically Buyer Sononed it in to kind of ease it a little bit, Chris. Yes.
But it was discussed. And the lasting power was there where you guys consistently reported about it and were comfortable saying that consistently. FSU is very much in this. And it was funny down the stretch when it became much more a national topic, both from our national folks and folks at other companies in the industry, that FSU was more in this and FSU was really a contender and FSU was top 2. And I thought that was interesting. I think he did an interview with Benjamin Wolk, who's on our Georgia site, roughly 10, 12 days ago.
Yeah.
And at the time, Ben asked him, who's your top 2, essentially, in Georgia and Florida State is what the young man brought up. So, like, KJ wasn't keeping it super secret that FSU was very much a contender, but I think a lot of people were very dismissive of FSU throughout the entirety of this recruitment until crunch time.
I think we were early to the party is really what it was. And that's sometimes not a bad place to be. It's a lonely place to be. It can be uncomfortable, but that worked out fine for us, obviously. and we were going to be able to tell the story one way or the other, right? Like, I think that's the big thing is like, we never said 100% certainty it will be Florida State, but it was a lot of confidence in it. And that's one thing, like, I think we do really well, a little pat on the back, right? But like, as a website, like, we are able to, and I learned this from Berg, like, this was a thing that he does well. It's like, if things go belly up and they don't go the way you think, you have to be able to, like, at least know if you went and stood up on a table for something and reported it with confidence to be able to explain why.
Yeah.
And that's all you can do. Yeah.
Always shoot straight.
Yep, is exactly, Chris. We shoot straight and just be transparent as possible without giving up sourcing or compromising the news cycle. That's all we can do. So we're going into mid-July here. And I think it was the first time we put out a report that really like got people's attention on this. It wasn't the backing into it anymore. It was me saying, I think if it was today here on July 13th, I think it would be Florida State. I think that was the first time we really like kind of put our what on the table on it. And that came from a few reasons. So we had some information, like the things we're talking about were ascending. We're keep getting more information. FSU wasn't going away from as we understood it. And one key detail that I had gotten, and there was like, so my confidence was getting higher. There was things I just couldn't share, even with like my dudes. Like, I couldn't share it with Zach and Chris, but like, I just remained confident in it. And Zach reached out to me one day and said he had heard from someone within our network. I don't know if you want to say who it was, Zach, but Zach had been given a tip by someone in our network that said in the Buford community, FSU is trending. And so my thought, and I'll throw this to you, Zach, but my thought was like, oh shit, like this might be starting to get out here a little bit at this point.
Yeah. No, I was talking to Philip Duke Scoops from the Auburn site, and he had let me know that after talking to some people around Buford, and he's really connected to that area. He's really connected to KJ and his family as well. So he did an awesome job covering that recruitment. He got an exclusive interview with KJ before the announcement, which was really cool. But yeah, he had told me that FSU was a school that was being brought up, which was, unusual prior to that point throughout his recruitment. So he brought that up to me, and then I shared that with Brendan. That's kind of how things start. I think that's kind of how the ball got rolling.
Well, and so there was also, and let us know in the chat, guys, if this is moving too slow, we'll speed up for you a little bit. I don't know if there's too much navel gazing. A lot of people want to know the backstory, but just like let us know how we're doing on pacing here, please. But one other thing that Zach, with what Zach just said, that like kind of forced our hand a little bit, was the Chad Simmons on 3 report. And Chad's report mentioned 5 schools and it's Florida State being in there. And like, that was big, right? And I was like, okay, well, that was at least something that was out there that someone nationally was able to acknowledge that Florida State was in it. But like, it's like, okay, our hands forced here. Like, we have to put out information on this. And if we're going to put out the information, we're going to put it out with the way that makes sense. And like, we're not just going to reiterate something at that point, because we had like a good amount of confidence that like, this isn't just FSU kind of hanging around and being pesky. This is FSU pacing this right now.
Yeah. And at this point, we're over 3 weeks into it. We're 3 weeks removed from the unofficial in June, where we really got the ball rolling with this. We're, I don't know, 23, 24 days removed from that, when we're really having to push it forward. And when you're pushing something forward, you're trying to report so people have information and you're straight with them. But there's also always, most times, some stuff in a situation like this where there's still a game to be played and weeks to go, with a situation where you're hesitant to say this because, well, this is sort of like it's got to develop more and we'll get there. But I expect it to do that. So you're always kind of weighing that, figuring that out while you're trying to report, give people information, be straightforward with people.
Yeah, and I immediately start having people saying you're going to jinx us, and like, and it's like, okay, like that's where we're at. That's fine, and that's when that's when the fun began, like publicly. That's when we start getting a little bit of pushback from people, regional reporters, and that's when expectations started ramping up for FSU as well, and so like that's when things start getting kind of fun and weird, and like the chaos part of this starts as we get into like middle July, later July, the Charles Lester commitment ceremony is coming up. That gets weird with the Colorado drama. And I'm told in no uncertain terms, if they don't get Charles Lester, they're not getting KJ Bolden, because he wants to go to a class that is legitimately like national title contending.
And we've seen the two of them interact a great deal since the commitment.
Yeah, they were
KJ
on. I was just say they were on Instagram Live like afterwards and just sharing some nice comments. I guess when KJ was heading home from the ceremony, so that was pretty cool.
KJ said after the ceremony in his interview for FSU fans to thank Charles Lester. And he mentioned Cam Davis, CJ Hurd, Luke Kromenhoek, but he mentioned Charles twice. And he mentioned Charles first. That's not lost on me. Like that was another big moment in this recruitment that FSU handled its business and locked up Charles Lester and made sure there was no funny business with Dion and Colorado. So like that was huge. That was another domino that fell. And that was another piece of information for us on the back end that we just kind of keep checking like this tallies. Like, okay, the things that are needing to happen are happening. So that's important. Now we get to July 30th. So we're going like to this, like the next week here. And that's when we put out another report saying that confidence is still high. But that was coming off of the Auburn visit, if my timeline's correct, the Auburn unofficial visit.
Yeah.
And there was initially, I was kind of flippant. I was dismissive of it. And as we started to get more information, all of us were in our Auburn side. Like, I think there was a legitimate like wave there where Auburn made a push. And I think FSU withstood it. Go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, to me, I just when I saw the Auburn stuff happening, I posted this on the board at the time, but KJ Bolden was quoted saying that Auburn was in his top 2, and that he almost committed to Hugh Freeze on the visit. And I do not doubt that Auburn made a huge push and maybe was a school contending, very heavily in his recruitment. But a lot of that seemed like a little bit manufactured because it was weird to me because KJ had always been pretty guarded with information regarding his recruitment. Chris mentioned before that when he spoke to Benjamin Woke from our Georgia site, he mentioned FSU and Georgia off record. Like that wasn't in the report. And Ben has put that out since after his commitment. So we're free to talk.
I ain't burning people, I promise.
But that was another, like, again, as we're collecting these data points, that was another one for us that he had told someone on background.
It gave us credence, that we were on the right track.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but yeah, around that time, after the Auburn visit, that stuff started rolling in. We started hearing that Georgia might be, making another push. And I guess Brendan and I were talking back and forth, and finally, I had heard from a source close to the Buford program after the Auburn visit that it was going to be Florida State for KJ Bolden, and I think that really gave us a shot on the arm when it came to that next week of reporting on his recruitment, because we had that in the back pocket of knowing that someone that is not an FSU source is telling us for sure that it's going to be FSU for Bolden. So I thought that was influential. Obviously, there was a lot of time to go because that was straight after the Auburn visit, but it really helped in our reporting that week to have that information in hand.
Absolutely. That was it. Kind of reminded me, Chris, remember the Bob Stoops week or two? If it's Bob until
you mean when Bob. I drove up and drove around campus and asked, why are these cars here?
And we had like the one day where we knew that there was a team meeting called, and we knew what the meeting was for, and it was just to handle your business going into winter break thing. We had it sourced. I was certain of that's what it was. I knew what it was. Yet there was still other outlets and just Twitter rumors and stuff that would not go away saying that it was something. And I remember it being a really cold, dreary day and sitting out there in my junky Corolla at that point, my 2005 Corolla, and the heat didn't work great in that car. And just thinking to myself, like, this is crazy. Like, I know that nothing's happening, yet I cannot not be here. And that's what it was. The time there was 2 timelines. And since the Marvel universe has made it to where there's now a multiverse, and that's now, so it's now instead of multiple timelines, it's multiversity, right? Is now what the kids are saying. So Zach's shot in the arm helped twice in keeping me grounded with his reporting to like what we're hearing, what I'm hearing on this, and it was sourced through like 4, 5, 6 people in different degrees who would
And-
know, in addition
And
to
people that weren't overlapping with one another. For the most part.
correct. Now, like, it could be a telephone thing where, like, you never know, and that's like part of, like, that makes reporting difficult sometimes. But when the message is consistent from everyone in your circle who you trust, that's all that we could operate with. And we had that, and we had the Duke Scoops in early July. We had Ben Woke with his input as well in the middle of the month. Duke's was earlier in July. Ben's in the middle. Like, that's part of being a network was really helpful for us, and like knowing that, like, okay, this is a thing. And then Zach's subsequent reporting as well, multiple times, especially at the end of the process. It all ties together for us to, like, put this stuff, like, confidence, right? And then once FSU was very confident, we proceeded forward with covering it in person. And so that's how that went together. It was a good 5-6 weeks. It wasn't always comfortable. Frankly, was really uncomfortable. I was very adamant. I don't want to be putting out this report that Friday night. I don't want to be putting my nose out there any further than it already is. I don't want to put my neck on the guillotine anymore in case it doesn't go well for Florida State and people don't understand what happened. I sure as shit don't want to drive up 6 hours because I stopped to pee a lot and stretch my legs because I'm old, there and back, to maybe this not happen. Like, I was throwing tantrums in the back end. I have COVID. I should be covering camp, all that stuff. But we proceeded forward with confidence, and it ended up working out really well for us as a website. Fortunately, more importantly, it worked out fantastically for Florida State. They did an amazing job with this recruitment, as mentioned at the top of this. Like, it was a total cumulative team effort. If FSU is not aligned as a staff, if it is not aligned as an athletic department with the messaging there, like in the functions of, like, what's going on with the football facilities, if the battle's end does not exist, listen to me. If the battle's end does not exist, like, these are things that aren't happening. FSU isn't winning this battle. I've heard a lot of BS in the last day or so from, like, the losers' lament of why KJ Bolden picked Florida State. If he wanted to go to a place where he, in 3 years, when he's on campus and proven and wants a guaranteed, like, NIL opportunity that would be crazy amounts of money, he could have gone to Auburn. All right. He could have gone to Georgia. Like, this was not a thing that was like, and then also the narrative that the parents forced him to go to Florida State. Bullshit. Like, that's just not how this went. And don't listen to the people who were wrong on this all along. Now start listening to them. No, like, just stop it. So FSU won it, and it won it because they did an amazing job from top to bottom of the program. Mike Norvell leading in the front. He offered KJ Bolden back in 2000 or 2020. 2000 would have been impressive.
He knew 20 years before he was born.
And Zach
before he was head coach at FSU.
And Zach wrote a really good column for us the pre-write. Fans love the pre-write of really, like, this being this win for Mike Norvell being a feather in his cap. That was really, like, the exercising of demons of the Travis Hunter thing, because all the parallels were there of North Georgia, DB. Sawani's really close to Buford, ranked similarly.
You got to drive by the exit to get there.
You did. I saw Swanee on the way there, and I smiled. I was like, "Oh, that's a story. That's a note there." You beat the dream school curse. Like, there was a lot of things that were there that showed FSU's in a better spot from a management style, from infrastructure, from being totally aligned than it has been. So that's
all right.
That's what I got on it.
Hyper version of Buyer Sonone, brought to you by
the Turner Group.
Buyer Sonone, most important recruit landed by Mike Norvell in his time at Florida State.
Bye.
100% buy.
Bye.
Yeah, I'm a buy on that too. Buyer Sonone, FSU will finish with a top 5 class now. They currently rank number 4 in the 247 rankings, behind Florida, Ohio State, and Georgia, correct? Georgia being number 1 currently, Florida being ahead of FSU. Does FSU sustain and stay in that top 5?
I'm going to Sonone. I think FSU is only going to add about 3 to 5 more guys in the class. And yes, they're going to go big big game hunting for some guys at multiple positions. But to me, there's not a lot of guys I would pencil in right now, and it's really hard to look in the future and be like, these guys are gonna make decisions to become or to commit to Florida State, because a lot of these guys are making decisions really late in the process. We expect like a guy like Jeremiah Smith. Like, I don't think that is a recruitment that's going to be over until probably signing day. So, I mean, like most, but especially with him,
I think getting KJ helps out with Jeremiah
Smith.
Oh,
100%. And we could talk about that, but to me, top 5, I think they're going to be the outlook for me is a lot better than what I said at the beginning of July for this class. I mean,
we need to pull some June receipts for Zach in the text. And I was starting to do that today. There's just way too much texting going on to get back there, but we need to pull up some receipts for good old Zach.
I'm down.
A lot of catastrophizing.
I'm down.
He rides the emotions like the youngin that he is.
And we got to pull Chris's linebacker receipts as well. But anyway,
hey, I love middle of the road linebackers.
Real quick, but that's the scope from the fan base has gotten so narrow to what they're complaining about now. It's like, all right, cool, like linebacker recruiting, the least important. Oh, I'm a former linebacker.
When Randy Shannon has a redemption arc of Chris Thompson with the portal and recruiting next year, we'll just remember these days, the tough days.
So Zach's, I think Zach, like between 4th and 7th is probably the sweet spot for where they're probably not going to jump Ohio State or Georgia unless you're talking about flipping like JJ Smith and getting some other names that aren't even really like on the board right now.
That's to me, like the board is so like limited right now at a lot of these positions because they don't really need to add a lot of numbers, right? Like probably 2 more defensive linemen, maybe another receiver.
Real quick, Zach, with that, like, I mean, we'll get into it, but like, what if they lose Lewayne McCoy? Like that opens up. What if Jamari Flagg? Like, what
are they getting someone better than Lewayne McCoy? If you
probably. I think you're.
I mean, he's a top 150 recruit, so like you're saying that they're probably going to go.
Brendan's feeling himself. He's feeling pretty good these days. Yeah. FSU's in that heavyweight class, and they're actually.
What I'm saying is that it's a lot of projections. So to me, I think they're going to be top 10. I'm not ready for them to say they're top 5.
This does, Chris, right? This does. I'll Sonone it. I think they're probably going to be 6th or 5th, most likely. And they could get to 4th or 3rd. It's not crazy, probably, but more 4 to 7 is probably the most likely sweet spot, I would think, just based on what's there to Zach's points. But this does probably the KJ Bolden commitment, assuming that it holds, and I think it will. That probably assures them of a top 10 class.
Yeah. Him and Lester, that combo. Plus, I expect, and I'm not one of these people that thinks everybody in FSU's class is underranked, but Luke is a guy who probably still has some trajectory. I think there's a possibility of Luke ending up a 5-star quarterback in the end.
I think so.
I think there's a couple guys, Elijah Moore definitely being one of them, who I believe could trend up. Heck, I love Red Morgan, and I'm not campaigning for him to move up. Like I don't think he necessarily has to move up, but I think Red Morgan is a guy who could potentially trajectory move up.
Yeah. So, what should end the Bolden talk with like he's really good.
The scouting report, he is elite, and he can play multiple positions. And FSU has a distinct plan for him that he loves. And when that comes together, when a kid likes what you're pitching and you actually live that life, which FSU does with versatility in their back half, those things usually go pretty well.
I don't know. Like I joked about in the scouting report, but like it just did the shrugging emoji for like potential weaknesses. I don't know like of any that are glaring to me. I don't know. I didn't see anything that was like this is going to be a problem for him. If it is,
it may be that like some of that's like you got to watch some full game film, but the fact that you're having to dig into that to even see some weaknesses is pretty crazy.
And we're like for my intents, like I'm looking at like athletic profile, right? Like that's all I can really dig up based on the huddle access that we have. But yeah, he is ranked very high for a reason. I think 98 grade, and yeah, that makes sense.
Speaking of Buyer-Sonones that set up topics, I'm going to go Buyer-Sonone. The commitment of KJ Bolden influences potential future commitments, specifically possibly teammates.
Bye. He said he was going to be working on. He said watch this, I think is how he phrased it. But he said he was going to work on This is after his commitment ceremony. So this is on record, him saying that he was going to work on 2025 linebacker UGA commit, Jaden Perlot, and as well as a 2025 DB, is it Devin Smith?
Devin Williams.
Sorry, Devin Smith's the wide receiver. Devin Williams, the 2025 DB. I'll hand it over to Zach here, but bye would be my thought.
Yeah, I mean, bye for the exact same reason.
Zach, did you put in a crystal ball for one of those young men?
Oh, yes, I did. Yeah, I put in a crystal ball this morning along with 24/7 Sports Director of Recruiting, Steve Wiltfong, for FSU to flip 4-star linebacker committed to Georgia, Jaden Perlot. I think FSU sits in a great spot there. I think they've actually sat in an excellent spot with him for quite a while, even dating back to the spring. But he's teammates with KJ Bolden, like Brendan said, and I think that really helps Florida State in this recruitment. I know Auburn's also involved with him, but right now I think FSU has the best shot to make him change his mind off the Bulldogs.
Yeah, and Jaden's a young man who was last here in June at Florida State.
Yeah,
On Devin Williams, go ahead.
I was just gonna. He's a top 50 recruit in the 2025 class, number 5 overall linebacker in that class. So an elite prospect.
On Devin Williams, also a member of 2025 class defensive back. I caught up with him today, and I'll probably write this either tonight or in the morning. KJ's commitment does have an impact. He's a year ahead of me, and now someone I can get firsthand information from about the program. Devin last visited FSU, I believe it was in March, might have been April. It was definitely in the springtime. And he's a young man with a good athletic profile. Buford's a great program. I try to give credit to most people that listen to stuff like this, that they understand a good bit about college football recruiting. Buford's one of those schools that produces a ton of high-level prospects who are very well prepared for the college game. I view them in the same prism of like a St. Thomas Aquinas, in the sense of when they spit a high-level prospect out, they're usually pretty well prepared to go to the college game and do stuff early on. Anything else we want to talk about regarding KJ Bolden, or are we feeling good about it?
I think 40 minutes was a little bit more than we had planned for, but it was an important recruitment in many ways. So
was it pivotal?
Oh, it was pivotal. There was many pivotal points in it too.
Yes,
you don't always see, but yeah, this was a big one.
All right, so Florida State got out there, got on the field starting on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. They had late afternoon, early evening practices. Brendan was able to make one of them. He was sick for the first one and hanging out with KJ Bolden for the last one. But I got to watch all three. He got to see the middle one. Zach moved away from us because he abandoned us, so he didn't get to see any of them. But my main takeaway is, one, FSU looks like what a Florida State football team definitely should look like, without a shadow of a doubt. And that's throughout the entire roster. Like, they look physically like a very good football team. And the athletic profiles of many of the guys really stand out. I mean, Keon Coleman's a blast to watch. He's very fast-footed, very athletic kid, shifty. He goes up and wins the ball. He had a great one against Fentrell Cypress, for example, on Saturday. The other thing that stood out to me, Mike Norvell talked regularly leading up to the preseason that they were going to push this team. Obviously, a lot of returning guys, high expectations, so many reasons why you kind of can't allow complacency and things like that to set in. And my God, did they push them on Saturday. I thought Saturday's practice was as competitive and vicious and just high tempo, and like, we don't care if you're laying on the ground, drag yourself off. We're going next rep, and we're going to keep doing this.
It was a little junction boys, huh?
Yeah, it just felt like, yeah, they're getting Sunday off. We're going to make sure all they do is lay in bed and drink water.
Oh, I'm glad I missed
Saturday. Was that, and it was it was enjoyable. It was first day in uppers, shoulder pads. So the O-line, D-line work was a little bit more truly competitive than you see when you have no pads on guys. And just in general, they got after it. And the offense clicked a little bit more than it had in the first 2 days. First day was described as erratic. Second day was a slight improvement on that. I felt like day 3 was another continual improvement upon that. Jared Verse has been awesome. Braden Fisk is fun as hell to watch. The motor just runs constantly. Darrell Jackson is a person that moves humans with great ease. O-line's had several guys that I thought have performed well. I thought Meach had a really good stretch on Saturday. I thought Bless Harris had a really good stretch on Saturday. But even a guy like Bless, he had a rep with Jared Verse, where Jared Verse got the better of him. Jeremiah Byers, when he's had opportunities with the first and second team, he's stood out with those guys, working with those groups that we would deem as such. And he's a guy we view as a starter potential guy. So, it's been good to see that. He had a pancake block, a finished block on Friday? You were there, right, Brendan?
Yeah, he cleaned up a block really well. That was exciting.
And that's like the peak version of him that like, that's what I like so much. That's what stands out to me. Mentioned Keon Coleman, but the receiving group as a whole has been enjoyable to watch. Destin Hill is a very athletic dude, quick hands, just makes some really difficult catches sometimes look relatively easy. Like I think there was one where he didn't run a route deep enough, but he adjusted so easily with his hand to the ball that like you couldn't tell that. I don't think that went how it was supposed to because it was such an easy catch. Keon Coleman's feet, ability, all of it, it's a blast. Him and Fentrell Cypress have been battling. Fentrell Cypress is fun to watch. He's always in position, does a phenomenal job of doing his job at a high level. There's a reason they speak of him as a starter on the island, probably opposite of Renardo Green there at cornerback. Safeties, we got a lot of young pups that we're watching there. Ashwin Barker's a JUCO kid, but you got Conrad Hussey, Edwin Joseph. Both of those guys have had some really good moments. Edwin Joseph on Friday had an exceptional PBU on the sideline, got the defense really fired up. I thought maybe the best play of that day. Kevin Knowles, who has moved more to safety, he's moving around a bit, but playing a lot of safety. He's had some very good moments. Had an excellent pick on Saturday when he went and took the ball. He went and got it.
He's gonna be all right there. I got a feeling he's gonna get them lined up well and be talented enough to not be a liability back there. It's gonna work well for them.
Kevin Knowles is a dude who's super well respected by the coaching staff.
Yeah,
when they speak of him, they speak of him in very high regard.
I was gonna add something like from what I've heard, like with Kevin, like early on in his career, like I don't think he was like getting along a lot with the coaching staff and just was not taking to coaching as well. And he was always like a great kid, but he's really turned the corner in that aspect from what I've been told. And that's really helped him elevate his game. I think he really likes Coach Pat Surtain. He loves Mike Norvell. That's really helped him, especially with him moving to a different position now. I agree with Brendan and you, Chris. I think he's going to fit in well there.
I haven't noticed, Chris. You've been there every day. When the ones, well, oh shoot, when the high end
people
guys
that we think are starter types are going against each other.
Kevin Knowles is going to play a lot of reps this year.
Yeah,
when he's going against.
I think at worst, Kevin Knowles is your third safety, and he's going to be the guy along with Akeem Dent and Shaheem Brown as like your primary three. And he's going to play a lot. And I think there's also going to be moments where they maybe use him at a different spot. But like nickel's a battle. I think a guy like Greedy Vance, who's played a lot of nickel in his career, can be very good there. A guy like J-Dub, who can play corner outside on the island. But if you're trying to start, your best guys might play nickel some for you. I think J-Dub's a guy who can be good there. Jerry and Jones.
I was talking to someone. I know you guys are reporting on it as well, but I heard he had a good practice. I believe it was the third practice.
Talking about J-Dub?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been good. There's a confidence with guys who have a lot of reps within this system with this staff, and he's one of those guys. And he's a guy who's completely bought in on this staff, and that happened well before this year rolled around. But it's
J-Dub loves Pat Surtain as well. Like, I know the fan base wants us to know if there's this quick turnaround because of Pat being here, and it's a fun thing to talk about. Man, that's also the defensive coordinators here for year 4 now. Like, these guys know what they're getting from Adam Fuller. But like there is a lot of respect with Pat Surtain that he demands and commands just by his presence. J-Dub is a perfect example of someone who I think, and Zach mentioned KP now as well. Veterans, guys who've been here multiple years and played for a different coach. Like I think that they are respecting the DB coach, and that's important. That's needed. That room has needed a lot of structure. And it's been a slow burn to get to the point where it's had this level of maturity. Fentrell Cypress is someone who helps a ton with that.
He's business like as they come.
So like drink the Kool-Aid. The pieces fit together really well. What I was going to say, Chris, is when KP's like out there and if he's guarding a pass that Jordan Travis throws, I haven't noticed that collection of defenders. Again, you've been there more than I have. Like they don't get beat deep. They haven't given up explosive. They haven't had MAs or anything from what I've seen.
With DBs, they've been very good in one-on-one situations and even 7-on-7. The thing you really want to see is when the bullets start flying at high speeds with everybody out there, how's the communication? Because if a guy can play the position, you're comfortable with it. But if they don't have good communication, that's where blunders happen and big plays come about. And we've had only so much 11-on-11 through the 3 days. They play a good bit of 11-on-11, but it's not like a scrimmage. A scrimmage is going to paint the best picture that we're going to see of that. But in the instances that we've been able to watch through 3 days of 7-on and 11-on, it's been good. The handoffs have been good for the most part. I mean, there's been moments where a guy didn't shift the right way or a safety got caught flat-footed and it led to like a big run or something like that. So, yeah, there's been moments, just not very many of them.
Hey,
so there's no panic button situation there. And truthfully, it's been pretty pleasing.
We'll see what happens with the offense. Like the offense the offense is always behind the defense.
Yeah.
That is
And
age
it's a
old.
little different than it's been in years past because they allow so much summer activity now.
Yeah.
That's changed over the last 2 years. So rhythm and timing and stuff like that's much better than it usually is.
This week is when the catch up should be, and we start seeing
Yeah.
some legit battles. I think
It felt like on Saturday the offense got going a little bit.
Starting to get
It
going.
wasn't. We didn't have one of those stretches where it was like, oh, they're shredding them, but it was good. But the defense is legit. The defensive line at a point of attack is a blast to watch. I mean, even when you're kind of in the depth of it with veterans like a Malcolm Ray or a Dennis Briggs and guys of that sort, it's still really good football being played. But like when it's a Jared Verse and Patrick Payton with some of those earth movers in the middle, guys like Braden Fisk, for example, man, they just create havoc, and it's consistently creating havoc, and it's fun.
How did AZ look on
Healthy?
Saturday? Yeah, healthy. That's good.
Yeah, he looks more like his old self. He hasn't quite had those like electric moments we saw some in year one, especially in the spring of year one, where he just kind of set the world on fire. But he's been good. He's been consistent, competed for the ball well in the air, been in position, playing through the arms and the ball when balls are caught by the opponent. He just looks more like himself. The great thing about AZ is he's got great length, pretty good feet, good athlete, and he competes. He's a kid that likes getting after, and he's looked like that. And
I think he needs like once he gets confident in all of that.
Quindarius Jones is another one I haven't even mentioned.
He was really good the day I was there.
He makes a play every day.
Yeah.
They got a lot of dudes in that secondary, decent amount of different body types, a lot of length, good athleticism, some bigger bodies, some smaller bodies. But you feel confident that they're going to have a nice group there and real good depth. And it feels like everybody's kind of rowing in the same direction.
This will be my final thought, I think, on my observation from the one day and just reading what you've put out, Chris, on Noles 24/7 with the practice reports and seeing video clips and stuff like that. So, like with the context I have, we went into this camp knowing that the coaching staff had high expectations of how the roster was assembled. And what I've seen in a very truncated period has not disappointed in that regard.
Yeah,
I was talking to someone the other day, and they were trying to ask like for weak links. I think like some freshmen are going to need time, right? And like there's like I wish the linebacker depth made me feel a little bit better. I wish the safety depth made me feel a little bit better. But like we're talking about depth pieces, and I think the big takeaway for me, the singular day I've been there, was you scan across the entire roster at any given point in practice, and you see the way the guys move. You see their frames collectively. There are very, very few people who I'm like, I don't know if that guy's going to be able to play at this level. They may not be legit like Power 5 FSU starters. There's not someone who's going to be transferring down to like FCS level or like being a scrub at like a low end G5 team. Like I think the evaluation, I think the development, generally speaking, has been really high. We've talked about this for several years now, Chris, like where it's been this build of like 70, 3 years ago was probably 50% of the roster.
Can we get 22 was 3 years ago? Can you get two good good starters on each side of the ball?
Yeah.
And that was a struggle. Then it was, can you get 33 to 44?
95% of the roster now looks like it should be played for a top 10 program.
Yeah. Yeah. And you feel like there's guys in the pipeline with them too. Yeah. Like you look at a position like linebacker, for example. We know Deloach and Bethune are going to be super dependable, what they're good at, and both look healthy. Tatum looks very healthy. It's well documented how banged up he was last year. And Kalen is a guy who's continually progressed in a positive manner in a Florida State uniform because he puts a hell of a lot of work in. Second team, you got DJ Lundy. You feel great about who and what he is. You know what he is. You know what he can do. Omar Graham is somebody super invested in, and he seems to be the one they're putting in that next spot, and they've really pushed him. But you look and you see a Blake Nicholson, for example, and you kind of know like he's got a little something to him. The athleticism stands out in that room among that group. He's a freshman. He's probably going to do his most work on special teams, but he's down the line. The next is finding the sixth guy, the next guy beside him who makes your 3 deep. And like D ends another spot. Those first 4 are pretty clear and well defined. Jaden Jones is a very intriguing dude as a third team guy. And then Dante Anderson's another guy who's put in a lot of work and done pretty well. And he's probably he's in that 5th, 6th conversation.
He's not Jones at this point like an elite athlete, but I've heard this consistently. Like they like his like pass rush like instincts, and that's just probably a guy who's gonna need 3-4 years. And he's entering what, year 3 now, or is this year 2 for him?
He's
3.
with Daniel Line, so it's
this is year 2. This is just year 2. And he put on a bunch of weight in the spring, and he's lost some of it. And I think that's by design. You put on as much as you can. So, anyways, I'm excited about the depth of this team. I'm excited about the top end talent. It looks really good. I'm looking forward to being able to transition into covering the football team primarily for this week. Knock on wood.
I am too. I'm very much looking forward to
that. Yeah, they'll probably FSU to the SEC on Monday. We're calling it.
Whatever.
We're calling it out.
Realignment. That feels like so last Wednesday.
Again, days or weeks at this point. It is very true. But no, I'm giddy. I'm excited to get out there and see them in full pads this week, to see some battles. And I think we should do a podcast at some point, Chris, in the middle of the week, like whenever there's a slow day, if that happens, where we can go position by position and thoroughly like go into. That's one of our favorite things to do in the off season. I enjoy doing that with Chris a ton. And I think this roster is going to lend itself to a lot of fun conversation as we start looking at this team and through the prism of like, this should be a 10-win regular season team at a minimum. Like that is the bar that we are setting at Florida State. Like this season, this should be a team that is competing to play in the ACC championship game, bare minimum. If that does not happen, that means a few things went wrong along the way. Like this is a team that's made to compete for something really big. And this has been fun to watch so far. I'm very much so looking forward to this week.
You got anything left in you, Zach?
I was just going to thank you guys for helping out with recruiting coverage over the past week, and hope you can get back to covering the team.
Thank you, Zach. I think we're all good. We've done a very good job, not toot our own horn, but we've done a very good job of being a very good website here recently. So with that in mind, one day left, 60% off at Knowles 24/7 for an annual subscription. So if you did take advantage of the 75% off, wow, sorry about that, but you can still get 60% off. So go get a subscription, go buy some Chattanooga whiskey, and if you feel like it, go buy a house and call it Turner Group.
If FSU wins the national championship, you are all buying new houses this year. Turner Group, who we call.
All right. Have a great night. We love you all. Bye.
All right.